Hello and welcome to the Beards and Business Podcast. My name is Anthony Pacheco. I'll be your host. Today I'm honored to introduce a guest, Doug Parker. He's a serial entrepreneur that creates enormous success in anything he does and gets involved with. Doug spent a massive amount of time in the financial services industry where he was recognized nationally, growing his company RMCN from a sole prop in 1997 to Inc. magazine's fastest growing private companies in America. Doug also is a national consultant with the Ambit Energy, where he joined the Yellow Jacket Millionaires Club. Doug also works in leadership capacity, serving all over the place, starting in finance manager for Hendricks Motors, founder of the Texas Credit Association, former director of the McKinney Economic Development Corporation, past president and treasurer, and current director of the NACSO, host of his own radio show, Ambitious Radio, and now long-term goal completion, published leadership author. Hey, welcome to the show, Doug.
Hey, I appreciate you having on, Anthony. It's great to see all of your success and all the things that you're doing. I love these podcasts, and it's really cool how technology has changed over the last couple of years. So, I appreciate you having me on.
Absolutely. Hey, we're going to kind of dig in a little bit to you. And one of the fun things about this is we're going to kind of figure out a little bit about Doug Parker. So tell us, being a busy guy, entrepreneur, everything that's going on, Doug, what do we not know about you? Tell us who you are, where you came from, how you grew up, things about that.
Yeah, for sure. So, hey, I do want to make one correction though. So you had alluded to something in the beginning of the intro about, having a certain amount of success and kind of everything I do or whatever you said. But the bottom line is I have failed a whole lot. I have many more businesses that I have failed at and ventures that I've failed at than I've succeeded at. But I've always tried to fail forward, if you will, learn from those situations to help me be better. And, nobody ever highlights the failures that they've had, but I've had more than my fair share of that. And in everything that I have done and continue to do, they're always in different phases. There's a season to everything, a beginning, a middle, and an end. And so I'm always kind of messing around with something over here, and then it's at a different stage over here, and maybe it's in concept in my mind. And sometimes you start doing stuff and you realize, this just ain't going to work like I think it's going to. So while I appreciate the accolades, I assure you, and especially if you're out there watching or listening today, if you're not having success in what you're doing right now, that's okay. And even if you are, there's probably some hard times coming. It's how life works. But those failures help prepare you in life to not make more massive ones as you have success and get things going. So growing up, I grew up out in East Texas. Just a good old East Texas boy. I like to tell people that, I grew up with holes in my jeans when that wasn't really the cool thing to have holes in your jeans. I see kids nowadays, taking a razor blade and cutting little holes, and I'm like, it's amazing how times have changed. But I never lacked for a meal or having a roof over my head or anything. But was never the type that had a lot of money growing up. My parents got divorced when I was 8 years old, and that was my experience in life. That was my normal. I think everybody kind of grows up with their normal, and you might be tuning in today, and maybe divorce has affected you, maybe as a child as well, like it did me, or it might be as an adult. Maybe you've been through a divorce, and that's a kind of defining moment in your life. And for me, I just wanted options. I didn't really like either one of my step-parents too much as a kid. And I didn't want to have to ask them for anything. I wanted to do my own thing. And I think that kind of pushed me into being an entrepreneur and wanting to earn, whether it was raking leaves, mowing lawns, all those kinds of things. I just wanted to have a little bit of money to do the things that I either needed or wanted to do. And so, grew up fast and worked hard and grew up in East Texas, as I mentioned, but then moved to Big D, to Dallas, to make a little more money. I used to think if I could just make about $50,000 a year, okay, I could buy myself a new Camaro and life would be good. That was I just thought that would be pretty all right. And with that being said, I got married at 19, 20, had 2 kids, and I just, realized that $50K wasn't going to get the job done. And, through that process, had some struggles. One day I was driving down the road, a piece of wood flew through the windshield of my car, broke my hand, had 8 pins in my hand. And that kind of caused a financial demise, to be honest with you. It went downhill quick because I was young and dumb, didn't have a bunch of money saved up. But through that process, we formed the company RMCN Credit Services, RepairMyCreditNow.com, and had massive success. I mean, it was just something we kind of backed into, but had a lot of success with that. And it was because we had messed up our personal credit. And then out of that, fixed our own credit, helped a few other people fix their credit. And now, a couple decades later, we've done about $65 million in revenue, helped about 45,000 individuals, improve their situation and transition through several other things as well. But yeah, it was just kind of backed into it. But yeah, that's a little bit about my journey from East Texas to Big D, if you will.
Awesome. Thanks for sharing that. Tell us a little bit more about your childhood. You left East Texas, came to Dallas. Tell us a little bit about that journey in small town Texas. It's difficult to leave your friends, everybody that you know, everything that you didn't know. Tell us a little bit about that journey.
Yeah, so I graduated high school when I was 17 and left home immediately, moved out, wanted to be on my own. And I jokingly say sometimes I don't know if it's being just defiant, just not wanting someone's thumb on me, whether it's a parent or a boss or something. But I always just kind of wanted to do my own thing. I always had plenty of work ethic, worked hard, did the right thing. And frankly, I used to think that as long as it was ethical, moral, legal, I didn't care what I did. I just want to make a bunch of money. But as I kind of continue to mature, I realized that a lot of the skills are transferable. And I just wanted, again, options. I mean, my first option was I wanted to be out on my own to be able to do what I wanted to do. After that, I wanted to raise a family and have enough money to be able to provide for my family and do those kind of things. And eventually, you want to provide a better life and more options and more opportunity, for the next generation. In Proverbs, it talks about how a wise man leaves an inheritance for his children's children. And so I wanted to start putting things in place, for that next generation. And so, I had to do things differently. It's if you keep doing things the same way over and over again and expect a different outcome, that's the definition of insanity, right? So, had to improve my leadership skills, had to improve efficiencies. I had to get smarter, and a lot of times, we talk about college, and people nowadays, a lot of people going to college. There's a lot of student loan debt. But when I was growing up, I did not even think that was an option for me. I made pretty good grades in school, but I really didn't apply myself at all. And I just used to think, I just want to get out of school. I literally thought about in my junior and my senior year, I thought about, man, this is for the birds, man. I think I was going to quit and go get a GED real quick so I got a jack with this. I just went through the motions as little as possible, made A's and B's, and then went to work afterwards. That was always my goal, was to grow up and go to work. And nowadays everybody's going to college, but they may or may not get a degree that they even apply to their business that they're doing. So a bunch of different options. I didn't go to college. I just went straight to work and had to provide for the kiddos. And like I said, the rest is history, man. It was just growing up fast, going to work, and making it happen.
So you believe that along your journey, you talked about how you didn't really apply yourself in high school, but now when I look at the Doug Parker of today, there's not a lacking of effort in anything that I've seen you do. So kind of tell us about that transition. What changed or snapped? Was it the finances? Was it just the being forced to do it? Kind of tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, I've often heard that lessons are better bought than taught. And so I've bought several lessons over the years. It's like, your parents always tell you, hey, don't touch it, it's hot. Don't touch it, it's hot. And you're like, it's hot. Like, yeah, I've been telling you it's hot. So I've bought a lot of lessons over the years. And frankly, I think a lot of it was that way. And when I said I didn't apply myself in high school, I applied myself in a very laser-focused way. So I would do things like, I remember we had this teacher named Miss Rainwater, and I took geometry, and she, about maybe a few weeks into the year, she saw me just leaving my books on her shelf in her room. She's like, "What are you doing?" I was like, "I'm just leaving my books here." She goes, "Well, why are you doing that?" I was like, "Because I wanted to be here tomorrow when I get here." She goes, "Well, you got to do homework." And I was like, "Listen, I ain't doing no homework. When I go home at night, I don't go home. I go to work, and I work like 8 hours. I would work like 35, 40 hours a week in high school. And I was like, I'm not doing any homework, okay? What I'm going to do is I'm going to do as much work as I can till the bell rings. And when I get here, I'll do as much work as I can until, you take, the grades or whatever. And you can either grade me on what I've got done, or you can mark the rest of them wrong or whatever, but I just ain't doing no homework." And she had told me, she's like, "Well, you have to do your homework." I was like, why? She's like, well, you have to do your homework so you can learn the information so that you can, pass the test. I was like, well, let's just make a deal. If I can pass the test and I do homework, are you okay with that? And she's like, yeah, but you can't do that. I was like, well, can we just try that? Let's just try. So I was a model student. I worked hard. I didn't disrupt the class. I did my thing. I got there. I worked the whole entire time, but I didn't do anything after the fact. So when I say I barely applied myself, I did no homework. I did no extracurricular activities. They actually wanted me to do whatever it is, UIL in math and stuff. And I told them I would do it and I'd win, but I was going to have to drive myself because after the UIL meet, I had to go to work. And they were like, no, you can't do that. You have to ride the bus. I'm like, well, then I'm not going to go do it because I don't need to win an award for you. I don't even care about the award. I just want to work and make money. And I'm not going to walk away from the money so that I can win a UIL award. So there was things like that in high school that, I applied myself very laser focused during the time, but did nothing else because I wanted to work. I mean, I'm intrinsically motivated. Now, one thing that I'm not real proud of, but it's just a fact, I never read a book my whole entire life until I got out of high school. I would take the Cliff Notes. I was an auditory learner, so I can hear stuff and really do pretty good about remembering it. Reading it was never my strength. And so I could listen enough and go through like Cliff Notes and stuff very quickly to get enough to make decent grades, A's and B's. But I never really applied anything more than that. But now, you fast forward, as you mentioned, the guy that I am today, and I'm a voracious reader. I love going through, getting content, business books. I just devour stuff. And while I don't have a formal education, I think I definitely have as they say, a PhD probably from the School of Hard Knocks. I've been through a whole lot and definitely an informal education. I think successful people have kind of three things. They have a plan, they stick to their plan, and they continue to educate themselves. So I think I definitely continue to educate myself, very self-taught on a lot of different things, but just not the formal education.
Yeah, it's interesting that you're talking in this way. The laser focus piece is definitely something that I can see, right? So your why just had to be big enough, and your why during high school seemed to be that it was money, right? We were focused money as our money motivator, and that was your why. And so because that was your why, that's where your laser focus went. Didn't mean that you didn't do great in everything that you did. Apply yourself 100% where you were there. It just wasn't something that you cared enough about to continue after you left there. So tell us a little bit about where did you work in high school? Where did you work? What did you do?
Yeah, so my very first job, I worked at a Brookshire's grocery store, and I was a sacker, and I worked as hard as I could. 16 years old, did that for a year or so, and I learned a lot. I mean, it was a customer service, you're customer facing, and so Brookshire's is in East Texas. It's a very conservative company. Literally, you had to wear black pants, a white shirt, and black shoes of some sort. I mean, it was very specific. Funny, no facial hair. No, I've never had any earrings, but no earrings. I mean, it was very buttoned up. And at that day and time, you actually got in trouble if you let someone take their own groceries out, even if they said, "No, I want to carry them out myself," or they want to roll their own buggy out. You're like, "Listen, I hear you, but I at least got to follow you out and bring the buggy back in." And so most of the time they would let you, take their groceries out. So there was things that I learned from a customer service standpoint, from a discipline standpoint. Some of the conservative nature on why they did things, the way that they did it. It was a good learning experience for me, but, I think I made $4.25 an hour. And at one point, one of the managers, I think I was like straightening something up on the shelf just because I was going by and, doing what I was doing as I was running through the store or whatever. And I was a sacker while they got people that stock the shelves and so, but I was just straightening up because I was going by. And the manager's like, "You know what, man, you're doing a great job. I'm gonna give you a raise." And I'm like, "Oh man," I was so jacked up and so excited. He's like, "I'm gonna give you a 10-cent an hour raise, and blah blah blah. It's gonna be effective next week or whatever." And I was so jacked up. And I think at that time I was probably I think I was a sophomore, so I think at that time I was working about 20 hours a week there, and I was thinking I was so jazzed about it. But 10 cents an hour times 20 hours. I mean, I was making like an extra $2 a week or whatever. I mean, it was really nothing. It was just the recognition and somebody seeing I was doing a good job that made a difference. But soon after that, I transitioned into the car stereo business, which I loved. It was great. Again, that's kind of what brought me from East Texas to Dallas because I got to move to Dallas to move to a little bigger store and manage a store at an early age. But Loved the car stereo business. Had the kind of the bumping, the bass and all that kind of stuff in the lowrider, and that was a cool time. But again, that didn't translate to raising kids and a family, so I had to exit out of that business after a few years. But yeah, lots of fun during those times.
Before you transition too hard out of that area, because I know a lot of the people that are going to listen to this are going to be able to relate during that time. What was the coolest stereo system that you had in any of your vehicles?
Yeah, I mean,
or maybe that you even built for somebody else.
Yeah, no, I built all kinds of cool stuff. But one I had 8 12-inch subwoofers in the bed of a truck. We had a bed cut that went through. It was pretty awesome. And then, but my favorite one is I had one 12-inch subwoofer that actually was in the bed of my truck. It just had a 6-inch port that went in through. I had a little Mazda lowrider, but man, that thing would rattle your brain. And it was a lot of fun. So I had a little Hiphonics amplifier, and man, it was low wattage, but man, it was unbelievable. The SPL, for those who know what that is, the sound pressure level that one 12-inch subwoofer would create. But yeah, it was fun times. I've done it a couple times in nice vehicles that I bought in years past. Put subwoofers and stuff in. I had a Jag, I put one in a while back, and finally I just man, that's for the kids. I can't do that anymore. These cars are so technologically advanced. I didn't want to blow up a computer or something. But yeah, I do miss the bass. I still like to crank it up every once in a while.
Yeah, that's hilarious. I think the first car stereo I put in my Camaro, that is E28 hatchback, and I put a JL Audio 12-inch subwoofer sitting right on that hatchback. Mm-hmm. And man, that thing, you could hear it from miles away. But and then later on, I got really dumb, and I think I spent like $5,000 on a stereo system I put into my Honda Accord, and there was a lot of money that you could dump into the vehicle audio system. It's crazy, right?
Yeah, as I mentioned, I think a little bit earlier, lessons are better bought than taught, and it sounds like you bought a couple of yourself.
Yeah, at the time, I think my car stereo system cost more than my vehicle. So
yeah, that was. Your parents probably told you that it was dumb to do that, but you just had to learn it on your own.
Man, it really is. It really is.
$5,000 in like Microsoft or Apple or something back 20, 30 years ago.
Oh my goodness, right? Things, yeah, like you said, can't learn those lessons today, right?
Nope.
So take us on a little bit of a journey, if you don't mind, connecting your past to now, and essentially car stereo business. What got you into entrepreneurial, the entrepreneurial spirit, and kind of into that bug? I understand your past, when you were a kid doing little odds and end jobs. But what took you from working for a company into your own business?
Yeah, so I mean, it's always been part of my DNA. I mean, I remember when I was a little kid, like 5 years old. One year, my dad trimmed up my grandmother's holly tree, and it had all these little just pieces of holly, little tiny ones. It was in December, and some of them had berries on them, some didn't. And I put them all in a trash bag. And then I took them back to the apartment complex we lived at in Houston. So I was in East Texas where we did it at, but then I took them back to Houston with us. And I literally walked around door to door at like 5 or 6 years old. My dad was there with me selling these little berries. These little holly things for like a quarter if it was just the green. If it had some little red berries on it, I sold them 50 cents. So always entrepreneurial. And then, mowing lawns, raking leaves, that kind of stuff. And then from there, I loved car stereo. So even when I was working, I've had a vehicle since I was 14 years old. So even before I started working, I was installing car stereos, doing stuff as a kid, 13, 14, 15 years old. Then went to work at Brookshire's, started making a little more money, spent all my money on my vehicle for sure. And then I was installing stuff part-time, not like as a business, but I would just do it for my buddies, getting experience. And then I went up to the local car stereo store and just showed the guys, hey, this is some of the work that I've done for people. Man, I'd love to work here. And I told them, I said, man, I'll sweep the floors. I mean, I'll do whatever. And literally, that's what they had me do. They had me show up one Saturday morning to sweep the floors. And man, the rest is history. I mean, I was working there, and it didn't take me too long because he was paying me like, minimum wage or something or another. But he realized I was quick. I bought tools. I started installing stuff. And I went back and renegotiated with him a few months into it. I was like, hey, I don't want to get paid hourly anymore. Why don't you pay me by the job? And then if I'm real efficient, then, I can make more money per hour than I could per hour. So it was always this entrepreneurial bug. Then, like I mentioned, I moved to Dallas. Then I got into, a management type role. And I got experience with that. I really enjoyed that. But again, you had this kind of corporate thumb on you, and then I just nothing really has ever happened fast enough for me. Like I want stuff, I'm very fast paced, and I want it to happen quick. And I couldn't move up in the company fast enough. I mean, I was an assistant manager and I was a manager, but I was a manager at one of the smaller stores. I wanted to be at the bigger store. There wasn't enough turnover, and so basically, I decided, man, it's time for me to move on. And I actually split off in a totally different business. I don't talk a lot about this, but I actually worked for a billionaire here in the Dallas area that he actually owned car dealerships, but he was wanting to get into the wireless communication business. And so one of the guys at the car stereo / wireless company left to go run that, and I went to work with him for a little while. And that's when actually the piece of wood flew through the windshield and broke my hand. And so I was truly disabled. So all that kind of side hustle work that I had been doing for years, I could put a stereo in, I could put an alarm in and make $200, $300, $400 at any time. I literally couldn't do that for 6 months or so. And I wasn't making the same kind of money I was on unemployment or whatever the disability thing that I had there at work. So that's what caused my financial demise. And then it was purely like I was in desperate times. So, man, Anthony, I hope you ain't never been like broke as a joke, okay? And I hope people listening haven't, but it teaches you something. Mm-hmm. And I say that to say that whenever I was like truly disabled, like I could not work. I couldn't just go out and do side stuff. And it was like I had to feed my kids. I had to have a roof over their head, and I had to have a vehicle to drive, and everything else went by the wayside. And I was like, man, we'll just have to figure it out when we get back going again. And that's what forced me to get in the car business. So I had bought a car from this dealership, and they'd been recruiting me and like, man, you'd be great at this. And I'm like, man, I don't want to be a car salesman, you know what I mean? And I was like, well, see that guy out there? Like he made $80,000 last year. See that guy? He made $100K. This guy right here, he made $300,000, and he was in management, And I'm like, well, man, maybe I do want to be a car salesman. This is back, 25 years ago, and that was a pretty good amount of money, for somebody that was uneducated, just selling stuff. So I remember interviewing at the car dealership, and there was a guy there, a really good guy, a little bit of a smart aleck, and I didn't know him then. And they all make fun of me for it still to this day. But I was like, man, I got to make $2,500 a month. I have to take home $2,500 a month, even though I had been making much more than that, even in the car stereo business. But like that's how much I had to make to pay for rent. Yeah, exactly. And without any of my nut, that was just the basic fundamentals of eating, of rent, and a car.
Oh, I got you. Yeah, that's very essentials. Sure.
I had got to make $2,500 a month just to like feed my kids, kind of a deal, and have a roof over their head. And I said, I'll figure the rest of it out, but like that is my absolute minimum. Like I'm like, do you guys feel like I can make that like immediately? Because it was straight commission, and I'd always been on commission, but it was a new industry and everything else. And this guy Bob tells me, man, I will. I'll make you a guarantee. And I'm thinking he's going to make me an offer, like hey, Doug, we'll pay you this for a couple months or whatever. He's like, if you don't make at least $2,500, during your first month, we'll fire you. And man, I was like. Honestly, I was really like upset. I was like, "All right, thanks." I hung up the phone a minute because it was an old school payphones because I had gotten back up and running again, but I was working at Best Buy making minimum wage after hours of my other job, just trying to get back on track again after I got hurt. And I was in the little in between, the front doors and the glass, the 2 sets of glass doors. They used to have a payphone in there, and I slammed that thing down. And those things are indestructible; you can't break it. Man, I was like almost in tears. Like I couldn't even afford. My cell phone had gotten cut off. I had to use that phone, and I called my dad and I talked to my dad, and he was just like, "Man, if it's an opportunity, man, maybe you should really take it if you really think you can make good money." And I said, "Man, there's like a lot of people that are making money, and I've always been a top performer. Mm-hmm. If anybody else is making money, I may not be the number one, but I can be one of the top guys." And so I just doubled down. I called Bob back and, started, the next week. And my first month in the business, I made I think I made $8,300. And to me, that was the most I had ever made. I was like a half a car deal away from being salesman a month, my first month. And I got there early every Saturday. I stayed late. I did whatever it took. And the rest is history in the car business. Like I said, I got into management, was a finance manager, and I made good money. But as I mentioned, I'd had the bad credit, right? So within a couple months, I was able to get financially back on track again, repaired my own credit, and then out of that devastating situation, God works in mysterious ways. I mean, you think,
Amen.
you got it figured out. You think you got an immaculate plan of how you're going to do stuff, and he'll do stuff totally different than what you thought, just so you know it wasn't really all you that made it happen. But out of that came the repairmycreditnow.com, and a company that, made millions of dollars over the years and made really good money personally as well. But got to a point where I did that till it really wasn't fun anymore. And I used to think, again, if I just make a bunch of money, I don't really care. Ethical, moral, legal, I'm cool, I'll do whatever. But that really isn't the case. I really, wanted to use my skill set for other things, and that's what kind of transitioned me into the energy space with Ambit Energy, and that's been a great run. I've been involved with that company for 8 years, but really for the last maybe five and a half years is when I've really been working it. And it's pretty cool business to be able to do as well. So it's entrepreneurial in some ways. Other ways, it's a direct sales / network marketing type business. So I get to build teams, do what I'm really good at, just working with people. And then I leave other people to do the administrative work and some of the things that corporate does. Because frankly, a bunch of corporate work ain't fun to me. That is not what I like to do. I used to think being a CEO would be cool and all that kind of stuff, and it was really neat seeing it on a business card. But like negotiating insurance contracts, Anthony, as you and I both well know, not something I like to do. That's why I didn't do it whenever we were dealing with you back in one of your iterations of some of the insurance stuff you did, right? I handed all that off to somebody else because I just didn't like it, man. I don't like that kind of stuff. So
yeah, tell us a little bit more about that. Like, as a CEO, that's an operational, piece where you're over the entire company, right? The buck stops with you, and how did that operational piece kind of fundamentally either transition or 180 your thinking from that entrepreneur, or did you just keep jumping off the building and learning how to build an airplane on the way down, like type mentality as a CEO, right?
Yeah, kind of all of the above. I mean, I had obviously no leadership experience in leading a company, and we had 110 employees at our all-time high, and I was young, man. I mean, I was barely 30 years old, running a company with 100 employees, and there are things that they stand out that you go back and you look, and if you could change things in life, I don't know about you, but I can definitely speak for myself. There's a million things that I would change in life if I could go back and change them. Now you can't, okay? Yeah. So you got to live with them. I'm just glad, that when I was growing up, they didn't have these camera phones, everything's recorded forever.
Oh man, I agree with that.
Luckily, some people have, some memories and stuff that fade away. But, the other side of it is there's things like, for me, I'll just kind of be transparent. I'll share this with you. So it was probably like 2006. So it's been 15 years ago almost, where one day I woke up with a hangover. I had a couple of drinks the night before, and I never was a whole big drinker or anything, but I just had a hangover one day. I just had maybe one or two too many or whatever. No problem, nothing was an issue. I just thought, this is the dumbest thing. Like, I don't feel good. It's a slow start. It makes my day, I don't get going and for 2 or 3 hours, really not getting my full motion. And in order for me to accomplish the things that I want to accomplish in life, and I can't have slow starts today. I can't be hungover. This is stupid. And I brought it upon myself, Mm-hmm. So I just decided then, I was like, man, I just ain't going to drink no more. I'm never going to have a hangover again. And to this day, I've never had another drink of alcohol. And it's not that, but hey, if Anthony, if you want to have a couple drinks, or if my wife wants to have a margaritas, I don't care. It doesn't bother me a bit. I just decided for me, I wasn't going to do it anymore. And so it's things like that strategically I had to make decisions on. And that was a lesson that I bought, you know what I mean? And I bought it because that morning I was supposed to take a Mensa test. And not that I think I'm some kind of certifiable genius, but I'm a relatively bright guy. I didn't realize that again in high school. But to go back and look and, made all A's and B's, and I never took any homework home. I never did anything other than what was in class, and I never paid attention, outside of class. Pretty good grades. There's a lot of kids that work real hard to make those grades and can't do it. So, but that was the morning I was scheduled to do that. So for a guy that's pretty smart to do something so dumb, I thought this is incongruent with really who I am. So I decided, I'm out, man. I'm just not going to drink anymore, because every once in a while I'd have one or two too many and just wouldn't feel great the next day. And so it's things like that kind of have defined my life and changed things. And in leadership roles, the people that you surround yourself by. I talked about Proverbs a little bit earlier, but there's another proverb that talks about he who walks with the wise will become wise. but the companion of fools will suffer harm. And frankly, I've suffered plenty of harm by being around dodos, and I've benefited greatly from being around people that are wise. And I mentioned Zig Ziglar was a mentor of mine, and first he was a mentor of mine through audio books and back in the old days when it was tapes and CDs, and then ultimately I went to a couple of conferences, and then went through his Born to Win and got to know him. Was able to actually, he was a personal mentor of mine, and then two of his proteges are great friends of mine that have kind of taken the torch and have ran with his legacy after his death. And so I've been on both sides of that. So it's a real learning curve, but most of the time people are exactly where they're at in life, with very few exceptions, based upon their decisions and based upon the environments that they have either created for themselves or have been created for them. So you have to make decisions, and then you have to make those decisions right, or pivot, make adjustments. And so being an entrepreneur is it's a decision, and it's not for everyone. We had talked a lot about kids going to college and how folks are kind of pushed into doing that. But the other side, there's a lot of people that are pushed to be entrepreneurs, and you need to go be your own boss and this kind of stuff. And guess what? Discipline. I can't remember if I said it in this setting or it was another recording before, but discipline is going to be administered in life no matter what. Okay, you're either going to get disciplined externally by the world, or you can be intrinsically motivated to have discipline, to have self-discipline. But either way, you're going to have discipline in your life. And there's a lot of people that, frankly, they need to go to college because they need to grow up a little bit more. They need that around them to help them out. The problem with being entrepreneurs, a lot of entrepreneurs that are great at being an entrepreneur, they were terrible students. They're terrible employees. Because they don't want to follow the rules. They want to do stuff outside the box. They want to do it their own way, which makes them good at being an entrepreneur. The problem is that a lot of people are conditioned from the time they're in preschool at 3 or 4 years old. Yep. Hey, you got to go potty at this time. You got to go eat at this time. You got to go to sleep at this time. You got to wake up at this time. I mean, all these different things. Then you proceed through to junior high, then to high school, and your whole life is told when you can do each and everything. Okay. And you're so conditioned, a lot of these people, that they need to be an employee for somebody, because they can't go do it on their own, because if they're not being told what to do, they'll go mess around and do stuff they shouldn't be doing, or non-productive activities. I like to call them MMA, money-making activities. That's what I try to focus on every day is MMA. And a lot of people, they just can't be a self-employed or an entrepreneurial person because they have too much free time on their hands. And before they know it, I jokingly said the other day that this pandemic, there's a lot of people, man, they're sitting at home, and before you know it, they're petting their dog or they're petting their wife or whatever, and they got sidetracked on something, and they're definitely not doing MMAs. They're not doing money-making activities. They're doing something totally different, and because they don't have a boss telling them what to do. And so if you need to be told what to do, you need to understand that. And if you're listening to this podcast right now and you're thinking you want to be an entrepreneur, you better have some discipline, because if you don't, the world will administer discipline to you, and it is not a friendly discipline that they give you, whether it's paying your taxes, whether it's paying your vendors, whether it's paying your employees. I mean, the world will have a way of disciplining you if you don't have the discipline that you need to be a business owner or an entrepreneur.
Man, that's some great advice right there. I know, entrepreneurship has been just exploded upon the world. And with everything that we've been going through with social media, the internet 2.0, and as we transition to internet 3.0, some of the things that we're seeing is just this massive push to go be your own self, do your own thing. And there are a lot of people out there that could be great number 2, 3, 4, and 5s for companies that could have a lot of creativity and really help another entrepreneur or maybe an operations person really run a successful business. Either through ownership of the company and or just as an employee, as a W-2 employee. So great value there. I appreciate that. Kind of talking into that best advice piece. What would be your own personal best advice, and what would that look like as far as an entrepreneur or even an employee, and how to balance that work-life balance? I think that's another big piece that the entrepreneurial world doesn't understand is, you work 80 hours a week so that you don't have to go work 40 hours a week for somebody else. And that's really what it takes to be successful a lot of time, and not in the way that's going to burn you out, right? You really have to love what you're doing to be an entrepreneur. And like you said, the discipline side of it that doesn't get talked about very much. So if you don't mind, just kind of helping the audience understand that work-life balance and just kind of how that's been relatable to you and your family.
Yeah, there's a lot to unpack there. So, so you can be entrepreneurial without having to be an entrepreneur. Okay, you can be an intrapreneur where you can work at a company and you can really help them and provide them with valuable tools, but still have the strength and stability and the structure of having that company support. Okay, having them pay the taxes, having them do a lot of the other things. Because true entrepreneurs, I mean, in the beginning, I mean, they're like the chief bottle washer, chef, cook, everything, right? Sales, marketing, accounting. I mean, and most people don't have all those skill sets. As a matter of fact, nobody is great at all of those things. Right. So somewhere the ball's gonna get dropped. But the goal is always to surround yourself by the best people you possibly can. Do your best to set your ego aside. Find people that are better than you at certain things, so you can build a well-blended team of people that. Imagine a football team, as a sports analogy, or a baseball team for that matter, where the only people you had on your whole entire team were quarterbacks. So you got quarterbacks blocking for quarterbacks, and quarterbacks running the ball, and quarterbacks catching the ball. And, against a team that has, linebackers and off defensive line, they're going to cream you because you don't have the right players on your team, okay? Right. So you got to put the right players on your team to balance everything out and set your ego aside that, you want people that are better than you in those roles. I mean, you don't want someone in accounting, okay, that you're better than them in accounting. If you are the smartest person in a room, in every room within your business, then you are you're hiring the wrong people. Okay, you got to hire people that are better than you to help you. Now, work-life balance. You talked about working 80 hours a week. Entrepreneurs are the only people in the world that work 80 hours a week, just so they don't have to work 40 hours a week for somebody else. And I do believe that's a true statement. And there's different things. There are activities that feed people, that feed their energy, their excitement, those kind of things. And there's things that just suck the life out of you. So for me, I mentioned, the financial services business, and I mentioned how it got to be not fun for me anymore. Being the CEO, looking at insurance contracts, just junk like that. I just didn't like that, okay? There are people, and what I'm fixing to say, this is not bad towards an accountant, maybe I call them a little bean counter or something like that. Like, I want bean counters working for me. I want people that love doing that, that love the numbers, they want to make sure they're right, because I need my numbers to be right. I just don't love doing that, okay? So, but I got myself where I was going back and forth to DC. You mentioned, some of the trade associations that I've participated in the past, and I'm doing, government affairs things. I'm meeting with congressmen and senators, and one time I'm flying back from DC, and two of the congressmen for Dallas were on the plane with me, and they knew me by first name. They came up and said, "Hi, Doug, how are you?" And like, I thought it was super cool for a minute, because I'm thinking, man, I'm a big deal. These dudes know who I am. Like, we're flying back to Dallas together. And as I was riding back on the plane, I actually got upset. I mean, I'm upset because I'm like, the only reason why these guys know who I am is because I'm participating in the political machine. I mean, I've made financial contributions. I've raised money for them. I've done things that are not money-making activities. What they are is self-preservation moves that I made, where I'm playing chess and checkers, like trying to think a few moves in advance to preserve the business that I had. And I didn't like that. I didn't like the way that politics works in the U.S. And I didn't like that Doug was the one having to do it for the industry. And I didn't like that I wasn't able to spend time with my team. I'm having to spend time doing this stuff. And so that drained me. And so that's where I mentioned, the network marketing business that I ultimately joined. That's where it feeds me, because I get to work with team members, and I'm super intense, man. I am a grinding, hardworking machine, man. And I literally do work, 70, 80, 90, sometimes 100 hours a week, okay? I really do. And if I'm not careful, I will grind my employees or team members into dust. I'll grind their little bones into dust because they just can't do what I do. It's not how they work. But in network marketing, I get to spend 30 minutes or an hour with a team once a week. You know what I mean? And most of these people have a normal job and they don't love their normal job. They're looking for more options, more income, more freedom. So I can be real with them and I can, tell them, hey, do you want to, have some more options? And they're like, yeah. Can I be real with you? They're like, yeah. And I can just go and be intense with them, but only for 30 minutes. And then they got the next 167 hours and 30 minutes of the week to not have to deal with Doug and his intensity. And they can go out and do their thing. But if you're around me for 40, 50 hours a week, man, it's pretty intense. And so, that has been an area that really allows me to feed them because they love that real, authentic, like telling them what they really need to do to go be successful. And I love being able to shoot people real and not having to, sugarcoat it. And then I can go back to production and then work with my teams and do those kind of things where I'm not having to do the daily grind and like you said, the C-suite, type environment where I'm just overseeing, 3 or 4 other executives in management level and stuff like that. To me, that just wasn't as fun. And so while it was awesome, ascending through the ranks and having the success within the company or with the company, like if somebody wanted to pay me like $1 million a year to go be the CEO of whatever, Fortune 500 company, honestly, I would not do that. I mean, now you pay me $10 million a year or 15, I might do it, right? It's for a little while.
Yeah, it's a little different.
It would drain me though. It would drain me, and
Sure.
it wouldn't be something that would be fun. I might be okay at it for a few years, but eventually it would drain me. And so, to your point, you got to do stuff that you enjoy doing, and then you've got to delegate and elevate. Delegate the things that either you're not good at or you don't enjoy doing. As much of that as you can, delegate it so you can elevate to a level where you do only the things that only you can do. Okay. And sometimes that's not the case. I mean, I'm not the kind of guy that would ever say, "Oh, I'm better than that." Like the toilet's overflowing, and that's beyond me to plunge it. I'll just let it overflow until a janitor can get here. No, I'm not going to do that. Okay, I'm gonna plunge that sucker because it needs to be done right now, and it ain't here yet. You know what I mean? But at the same time, I'm going to try to get somebody to clean up the mess afterwards, so that I'm not having to do it because that's not a good use of my time.
Sure.
And it would take me away because at 168 hours that I've mentioned a couple times in this recording, every single person on earth has 168 hours in a week. No matter how smart you are, no matter how much money you got, none of that matters. Okay, that is the great equalizer is time. So you have to be efficient with your time and do things that make sense with your time and delegate out what you can. I was talking to a guy today about mowing his lawn. I mean, he's been mowing his lawn. He don't even like doing it. You know what I mean? I'm like, bro, for like 30 or 40 or 50 bucks a week, man, like you can have somebody do that for you and you'll never have to touch it again. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So for like a couple $100 a month, it'll be like on point and you don't have no more allergies. You ain't got no more jacking with none of that stuff and it's done. And he's always done it because he, in a previous life, was a school teacher and didn't make a bunch of money, and $200 a month would have been like 10% of his take-home pay. Well, now the guy's making $250,000 a year, okay? And he just had this old memory of what he'd always done. And I'm like, dude, don't you ever mow your lawn again? I'm not going to be your friend anymore if you do, because that means I'm hanging out with people that are not smart, and I don't like to do that, okay?
Sure.
The average of the 5 people you spend the most time with, I want to spend people with sharp people. Don't do dumb stuff.
It's funny that you say that. Grant Cardone talks about this a lot. He talks about, just the strategy of offense and defense, right? So many people were raised by people that taught them defense and not the offensive stuff. And, those money-making activities, those are offense, right? And we're not really taught how to do MMA, right? We're taught how to build your budget, stick to your budget, work your job, and make sure that you show up every day, do a good job, all of those things, so that eventually you can get promoted, get a raise, and spend more money, right? Like that is the circle. And when you talk to successful people, they have a completely different mindset on money, right? It's those MMAs that are able to allow them to go buy things that are assets that are going to produce more revenue for them, not so that they can go buy the fancy cars and the flashy things, where if they want to, they can, right? But that's not the goal, right? And so I think that's a really huge nugget that we're all going to take out of this. So I appreciate you sharing that. I did want to talk about one thing, and that would be the books that you're currently reading right now, or books that you've read in the past that have made the biggest impact on your life. And I know that you wrote a book, and we're going to talk about that a little bit more in a minute. But if you could just kind of walk us through that book. You've given me a lot of books to read. Some of them are on my shelf behind me right now. You're the one that really inspired me to start reading again. I was just like you in high school, where I didn't read a book unless I was forced to, and it was how fast can I get through the cliff notes and abbreviate this thing just to get the study done. But whenever it came to really educating myself outside of higher education, my goal was, what can I glean from the business world that they don't teach you anywhere else? So if you don't mind, just teach us a little bit about, your favorite books and what you're reading right now.
Yeah, I mean, there are so many great books out there. I'll rattle off a couple of them. Zig Ziglar, I can't say enough about Zig.
Sure.
He had a book, that first came out. I think it was called like Pump Handles and Biscuits or something, but ultimately was changed the title of it to See You at the Top. Mm-hmm. And for those that might have some self-esteem, issues, man, it's a really good book. Zig talks about God doesn't make no junk, and he's from Yazoo City, Mississippi, and he has had a very interesting way he presented stuff. The book is phenomenal. I prefer to listen to Zig because I like his voice and just the way he presented stuff. But that's a great book because it helps to build you up. I mean, your whole life you're told, no, you can't do stuff as a kid. No, you can't stay out late. No, you can't do this. No, you can't do this. No, you can't do this. And some people get conditioned to think, no, they don't have the ability, as opposed to no, they don't have permission. And I think Zig does a really good job in that book about building people's self-esteem up and letting them know that you can do it, and then he'll see you at the top. And it's got some spiritual stuff in it. It's got some really good points. So I really love that book. There's always the classics of Think and Grow Rich and How to Win Friends and Influence People, and those classics. Jim Collins has a good set of books of good to great, but then he has one that's called Built to Last. That actually was a sequel. It was a book written afterwards. It was kind of a prequel because people were saying, hey, well, what if you're not good yet? Trying to get from good to great didn't do any good if you're not good yet. So, but my favorite in that whole series, there's like a white book, a red book, and a blue book. And the blue book is called Great by Choice. That's actually my favorite book in that. Jim, on the other hand, is very dry in the way he presents information. Very, very, very dry. So I prefer to read his because listening to him is kind of like watching paint dry, but great information. And probably even to this day, one of my favorite books ever is by Andy Andrews. And it's called The Traveler's Gift. And it's a fiction book that is about a guy that feels like he's at the end of his rope, and he goes into a coma, and as he's in that, he has these interactions with like Abraham Lincoln and Michael the Archangel and Christopher Columbus and several other people that you would have heard of all of them pretty much, and each one of them gives him a nugget at the end of the chapter, if you will. So it's applicable to life, and it's really, really good stuff. And Andy's got a real good story. I've gotten to know him over the years, and he's a really good guy. So lots of great books out there. But if you're not a reader, you hear that leaders are readers, and I think there's some truth to that. But you can be a listener too. Don't be intimidated if you don't like to read or don't feel comfortable reading or are a better listener. What I do now is I get the book and I get the audio, and I listen to the audio, and then I highlight the book as I'm going through it, so I can have some highlighted notes as I want to go back and reference that kind of stuff, and it helps me to get better at my reading. Because frankly, I wasn't a great reader as a kid. I didn't realize that I was dang near blind growing up. That was my normal, and I didn't want to wear glasses as a little kid because I thought I was dorky, and so I lived my whole life until I was about 35 years old, not being able to see worth a dang. Couldn't figure out, why when I look at this stuff, why when I'm reading this, why do I just tune out? Well, it was because my eyes were focused, and as I looked at it, it would go, whoop, it would get unfocused. But anyway, that's another lesson that I bought. But anyway, it made my auditory learning a lot better. But that's kind of what I do there. And then currently, a book I'm going through, it's called Think Again. I'm gonna pull it up here on my phone just to give you some more details. I'm pretty sure it's called Think Again. Yeah, Think Again, and it's by a guy named Adam Grant. And it's just talking about thinking through stuff differently. And the smarter you are, the more difficult it is for you to reevaluate your thought process, because sometimes you think you're smarter than everybody else. And so you're like, no, I don't need to do that. I know. But reevaluating, rethinking, the world is moving faster than it ever has. And sometimes if you start over a project without any preconceived notions, as opposed to just changing something and making it better, if you start from scratch without anything that you had before, you may come up with something far better. And so he just talks about some processes of going through that. I'm not through with the book yet, but it really is it's really a good book. And so, and you mentioned Grant Cardone. I mean, I love the 10x, the 10x rule. I mean, Grant Cardone is hardcore. And if you are the kind of person that has thin skin, that has some self-esteem, maybe not where it needs to be just yet, don't read the 10x rule yet. Go through, see at the top, right. Self-esteem build back up, because Grant will slap you around a little bit. But I love it because I ain't worried about it, man. Like, you give it to me, come on, give it. Mm-hmm. And he will absolutely give it to you. He is a no nonsense. He has this one little saying where he says, quit being a little whiny B word. And
don't be a little B. Yeah.
But yeah, that's a handful of books that you get through all those. If you're listening, or if you already have, you probably have a certain level of success, and then you can just go grab something else. The one thing I will tell you is you got to be a continual learner. A lot of these books, you're going to see a common theme throughout them. And so it's going to be like a spaced repetition. So you might have heard it and see at the top, and then all of a sudden you hear a nugget out of this book. It's like, oh, man, I've heard that before. And you get eventually to a point where you don't even know where you got all the concepts from. You just know that you've heard it enough times that it's got to be real, or you've started applying it to your life. And so I often tell people that if you've heard me say something, or you've seen me write it in a book or whatever, and I appreciate you mentioning the book that's coming up, but if you've heard it, I've probably adapted it, adopted it, stolen it, forgotten where I got it from. I come up with very little on my own. It's normally something I have learned from someone else. So if I've ever not given somebody credit for something, it is not on purpose. I apologize in advance to everyone, because pretty much everything I've ever gotten is from somebody else. I come up with very little on my own, but I'm pretty good at regurgitating the stuff that I've come up with, and which is some of the things I've done in the book. It's called Momentum Makers, and it's on leadership. Momentum is a big deal in business, and so that book is launching here real soon, and I can't wait to get some feedback from everybody on it. But leadership has always been a passion of mine. Everything rises and falls on leadership. That's John Maxwell that said that, and I truly believe it. Everything that happens is done by somebody leading out front. By pioneering and doing stuff. A lot of times you get arrows shot at you. You're the first one to take one of them, but at the same time, leadership is where it's at. You gotta jump out front and do things, and with the momentum makers, as I mentioned. I was talking to somebody just yesterday, and I really truly believe this. They often ask me, why am I not having the kind of success that I want to have, and different things, and I don't know why. I had this epiphany yesterday, but I said, hey, listen. Not why you're not having success, but why I have had success is because I never lose momentum. I never lose momentum. I get up at the same time every day. I get to work at the same time every day. I am very disciplined about everything I do. And because of that, I keep momentum. And it's like riding a bicycle, man. When you start pedaling on a bicycle, we've all done it. And you're pedaling, you're going as fast as you can. And then all of a sudden, man, you can stop pedaling, man. That bicycle is hauling butt and just keeps on going, right? But Absolutely. If you let it stop, the momentum, it'll start wiggling around and it'll fall over. But if you will just pedal real hard again for a few seconds, it'll keep on going. And then, a few seconds later, you pedal real hard again. You just got to keep the pressure on, okay? It's not something where you've got to pedal that hard, because you couldn't possibly pedal that hard forever. But you just have to keep the momentum going. Don't lose your momentum. And if you can avoid doing that, I can assure you it'll add much success to your life by just keeping the momentum. Don't lose it.
Fantastic nugget right there. I mean, that's huge. And again, we'll put a link to the book in the show notes, of course. And everybody that that could support that would be amazing. So I know if it came from you, Doug, it's going to have some great leadership pieces. You've been surrounded by a lot of people, and again, you're trying your best to always surround yourself by the 5 people that will make you better and just continue to grow you. So I just got to transition to one last piece here, and that's a little scruff that we got going on the face there. Tell us a little bit about that when you start growing that out.
Yeah, man. I know that's the kind of the theme of what you got going on, the beards in business. And so, it's kind of funny, man. All growing up, I mentioned that even at Brookshire's as a kid,
right.
No facial hair, no nothing. And I think their model for that, there's no exposed tattoos, no earrings, or anything. And I think their goal for that was that they didn't want to potentially offend anybody by that, being out there. And they wanted to provide a good customer experience. And, a lot of things have become the norm now. I know that in the past there were jobs that, I was as a kid, but there's jobs as an adult that they didn't allow you to have facial hair, and they thought it detracted from things. And people, there's an old wives' tale, I think, of, people with facial hair are trying to hide something, or whatever. I don't know. But everybody I've ever seen with a beard, it is less hidden. You know what I'm saying? Your beard is very obvious, with a little everything. So it makes it more apparent. But, probably, 4 or 5 years ago, man, I just kind of got to the point where, I'd let it grow out every, 2 or 3 days, and I'd shave because I didn't want it to get too scruffy personally. I kind of liked it a little more clean cut, but I would let it grow for 2 or 3 days, and then I would trim it. And let it grow for 2 or 3 days, and I'd trim it. And then part of it was just pure being lazy because I didn't want to go get clippers to keep it trimmed. And then, I don't know, some point in the last couple of years, maybe 3 years ago, I'd say, I'm just going to have a beard. That's what I'm going to do. I went and got some of the expensive clippers to keep it all trimmed up. And so I like it nice and trimmed personally. I don't grow it out, too much. But hey, man, I found that I don't know. If it serves me well, I don't know if anybody ever doesn't do business with me because I got a beard or not. Maybe there are, you know what I'm saying? Hey, I guess it could happen, but it seems like the world has definitely changed. They're a lot more accepting of piercings and tattoos and those kind of things. Those 2 things have never been something for me because I just kind of grew up, without that. But my dad has pretty much had a beard my whole entire life. And so I just, a few years back decided to do it, and the rest is history.
That's awesome. Yeah. I think that there is that little bit of a stigma from the past that is kind of being changed, and I've seen a huge directional change during COVID, where people weren't going to the office anymore. They were working from home a lot more. That's when I started growing mine. I grew mine a year ago. I never had facial hair before a day in my life, and I did the same thing like a couple of times. Just didn't shave because I was on a trip or something like that. But typically Monday morning it was shaved off again, and I think that there is a lot of that, and it's a lot more socially acceptable now. And I don't think that any of us really recognize if we lose business. I've gotten kind of that head shake from some people in a car driving by, like I'm on my way to church with my curled up handlebar mustache, and beside me there's a couple of people, and they look over at me staring at me, and they're like shaking their head when they turn away. It's kind of fun, and I just wave, hey, how's it going? But when you're talking to people, it changes the dynamics of the conversation with the handlebar piece. It's kind of that attention getter, right? But I love the tight professional look. I think that that's something that's that can be sported in any environment and is accepted. So appreciate you sharing a little bit about that with us.
Yeah.
Hey, sure. Before we get all wrapped up, is there anything that you would like to say that you haven't had a chance to say yet?
Yeah, the only thing I kind of close it out with is, for those that are looking at doing business, for those that are looking at being an entrepreneur, you hear a lot of times, burn the bridges behind you, burn the boats, so that you can't go back. And I'm gonna elaborate on it a little bit, and I'm gonna kind of talk out of both sides of my mouth on it for just a second, though. So sometimes people burn the bridges because they get where they're so upset. They're done with their boss. They're gone. They're going to go do something on their own. And I don't think that's going to serve you well in general, okay? Because normally, our pastor was preaching on this a while back. He just talked about, if you kind of blow out in a situation like that, normally there's something going on with you that even if it's that person, you're going to get another person just like that in the next iteration, the next job, the next whatever. And until you figure out how to effectively deal with that, it's going to keep recurring in your life at some point. So, make sure that you're not blowing out. Now, I think it's a good idea when you leave somewhere to let them know, hey, listen, I'm not coming back. Don't call me back. Leave like Michael Jordan did the first time, when he retired, where you go out on top. Nobody could ever question his ability, his skills, his championships, and do a great job, for your employer. They're paying you money, and give them everything that they're asking for and more, so that they'll give you a good reference, so that you can leave on good terms. But, do burn the boat in that you're not going back there again. You're done. You're moving on, because what happens is it's that situation, where if you start having doubt, if you start having frustration, you might quit too soon on what you're doing and go back to what's comfortable, as opposed to what's uncomfortable. And if it was easy, everybody would be doing it. Okay, there's no question about it. It's going to be uncomfortable. It's going to be difficult. You might go back to a similar job somewhere else if you fail, but just don't go back there. And it might be that it comes back around full circle. It might be that at some point you can provide value to them as an entrepreneur in some situation. It might be that you go back to work at a competitor, but then, later on down the road, 3 or 4 or 5 years later, hey, you've risen up through the ranks, and maybe you go back over to buy that company or something. And you want the people that work there to remember that when you left, you were on top of your game and you're doing a great job. Not that you blew out and it was some kind of a bad feeling. So leave on good terms, but burn the boats behind you, so that you're not coming back. Don't be that one that's the ex-girlfriend keeping on calling you back and just saying, hey, how are you? How's everything going in your new relationship? Make sure you cut those ties and move on down the road.
Great mic drop right there. Hey, Doug, we really appreciate you being on the show. Thank you so much. Again, we're going to be sponsoring the page, or our page will have a link to your book, as well as some of the show notes throughout, because there were lots of nuggets there. Really appreciate you coming on, and you have a wonderful day. If there's anything ever you need from us, you let us know.
Right back at you, buddy. Appreciate the opportunity to come on. Have a good day, everybody. See you.